This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, June 21st show, bringing in expert advice and inside knowledge on today's events in our local economy and how it can affect your money. And if you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, you can call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com to discuss anything regarding money or to talk to any of the guests that I have in studio today. And in studio right now, we have Greg Prill with Coldwell Banker Bain, and we're going to talk about a little bit of real estate. Greg, thank you for coming back into studio.
Well, thanks for having me, Tina.
And a little background about Greg. He's a full-service real estate broker, and he's an attorney. So it's a nice combination to have in studio. With more than a dozen years' experience, Greg is an expert negotiator with an impeccable attention to detail. Greg leverages his two areas of professional expertise to ensure that you find the right home at the right time at the right place. Greg is a graduate of the University of California and at the Chicago-Kent College of Law. Greg, thanks again for coming into studio, and I'm excited about the topic today to really talk about the seller side and kind of what's happening for them, because it is a seller's market.
Oh, absolutely.
Without a doubt. But there takes some strategy to making sure that they're maximizing their opportunity as well. So let's first talk about the real estate market and what's happening.
Sure. So I think that one of the things that you mentioned a little bit earlier during the show today was the record low inventory that we have in our region. And there's lots of different reasons for that. But the fact remains is that there are lots of buyers out there who want to live here. Because we've got great weather, we've got a great natural environment around us, and we've got a lot of great jobs that are coming to our region.
Yes, yeah.
But notwithstanding that, there's a lot of folks out there who want to buy who can't because the houses just aren't there for them to buy, which is quite disappointing for a lot of my clients.
Mm-hmm. So, Greg, let's talk about, again, being a seller's market. A seller may think, you know what, I can go online, I can get the same data that a realtor would. Why don't I just sell my house myself instead of hiring a real estate agent?
Sure. I mean, what we're seeing with the folks who think that they can do it themselves, it's nothing new. There's always been the for sale by owner market out there, FSBO, and that's about 2 to 5% of the market at any given time. And so what we're seeing is an evolution of those types of sellers out there, the folks who think that they can do it themselves. And what's really interesting, I think, is that the National Association of Realtors came out with a yearly report. And one of the statistics they came out with is that the typical FSBO home sold for $184,000 as compared to an agent-assisted home that sold for $230,000.
And it is, if you're listening right now, and if you heard those numbers, it's a really bad mistake to not hire a professional to do anything. Whether you're getting the best book on the market to talk about Social Security, you're going to the assessor's office to really understand and find out what you're voting for affects your taxes. When you're selling anything that we do, we need to have an expert behind us. And I just love that NAR comes out with these statistics and these numbers to really help sellers not. And if you look out there, there's really not a lot of them anymore. I think people are starting to get and realize the value really in a real estate agent.
Absolutely. And what's, I think, very important is that at least for a while, there was this trend towards somebody coming in, allowing you to use their name, get on the MLS, and to sell your house that way. That was a quick way for you to sort of bypass the classic agency relationship with your broker. And there's one particular service that I'm aware of that promises you, gosh, if you go with us and you pay us a couple $100, we're going to get you on the MLS and we're going to save you on average $10,000 worth of commission. Well, all brokers who are members of the Northwest Multiple Listing Service have access to sales statistics. And I was curious, so I spent an afternoon taking a look at the past couple of years, and strangely enough, what I found is that while they may have saved some $10,000 worth of commission, they were actually on average selling for $10,000 below list price.
Yeah.
So what you were gaining on the one hand,
Yep.
you were giving away with the other hand.
And I think if you're listening, you think, well, but why is that? Because I'm getting multiple offers. Yeah, that's the problem. Is when sometimes when you have more versus less, it's actually harder. It's harder to accomplish that best deal at the end when you've got 20 people making an offer on a home and you're not an expert and you don't know all these things to do to actually maximize and start that bidding. It's very overwhelming.
Very overwhelming.
So, Greg, let's talk about full service. A lot of real estate companies out there advertise as full service. What exactly does that mean?
Well, so I think that there's this great line from the movie Princess Bride where one of the characters keeps on saying inconceivable, and finally another one of the characters says, "I'm not quite sure that word means what you think that it means." And for a lot of brokers out there who claim to be full service, I'm not quite sure that they think that the word means what it actually means. And to me, what a full-service broker means is that I create a relationship with my clients. I get to know them. I ask them questions. I learn from them. I take the time to listen to what their individual concerns are. And I think that we've all had the experience where we've tried to get customer service over the telephone and you wait 20 minutes and you get to a tier 1 person and you explain yourself. And then the tier 1 person says, well, I can't really help you. I'm going to push you off to the tier 2 person. And then you got to re-explain yourself. What a full-service broker should do is be the person who's your sole point of contact. This is the person who, when you have a question on Sunday night about something, you've got their cell phone number. You call them up and they answer that question. When the 20 offers come in, that full-service broker will take the time to go through each and every single one of those contracts with you. Because, look, sometimes you do have a lot of offers on your property because you've got a very attractive house and people want to live in your neighborhood. And maybe one of those offers is for $15,000 over list, but it's so chock full of different sort of addenda on them. If this happens, then we're going to be able to pull out. Some of the things that you were talking about a little earlier, some brokers are taking to heart your advice and are trying to make offers as clean as they possibly can.
Yep.
But there are still lots of brokers out there that are adding these, I don't want to say tricky addenda, but if you don't have the experience, you don't fully understand what the consequences of those addenda are in your purchase and sale contract.
Makes total sense. So let's talk about a value. How can a really, not just a seller, but the agent in this market and all this craziness going on, determine what the value of the home is?
Yeah. So lots of folks will wonder, well, what's my house worth? And quite frankly, the simplest answer that I can give, it's what somebody is willing to pay for your house. Now, how do people find out about your house? Well, they find out about it by appropriate marketing. But you don't even get to the appropriate marketing stage until you've put it on the market. And the first thing that you need to do is gosh, I've got the house next door that recently sold for $500,000. Why can't my house sell for that same amount of money? And what a full-service real estate broker is going to do is he's going to look at 6 years' worth of historical sales data. He's going to look at 4 and then 2, 1, and then 6 months' worth of data, and he's going to look for trends. And so when a client asks me what's my house worth, I'll actually pull down the historical data. I'll filter it. I'll figure out why certain houses sold for certain amounts of money, and I'll sit down with them. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 hours to explain how I come up with the value that I think that their house is worth on the fair market. And what I've found is that for most consumers out there, when you take the time to explain why you're coming up with the dollar amount is less important to them than why you came up with that dollar amount.
Yep.
And so if I can just give you sort of a quick little story recently that I had a woman who thought that her house was worth a certain amount of money. And I toured the house and I pulled up my historical data. And we spent about 4 hours on this, and we were going through, because she had gotten some ideas, taking a look on public-facing websites. And at the end of that time period, she had a much better understanding of what her house was actually worth based upon the data that we're able to get from the MLS and from the King County Tax Assessor's Office, which is a wonderful website, by the way.
Yes, it is.
Of those 4 million plus page hits every single month, I'm probably about 1 million of them. And she came away from our meeting more confident with what we eventually listed her house as.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a mysterious process for her, which was just a great experience.
Well, and I think that's key too, Greg, is really for a good realtor is going to be able to communicate with their sellers, take the time to let them know how they're coming up with this, show them the data. And I think if you're seeing it and understand how it's coming together, then it makes sense. And you can get over really quickly how, yes, my house can sell easily without doing anything. That's not the question. And some can't. If you list it for the wrong price, it's not going to sell all on its own. It'll sit there, and then that could be devastating. But so what do you tell a seller that says, you know what, it's just going to sell all on its own?
Yeah, I tell them, no, it won't. And and if you're looking for a broker who is going to tell you what you'd like to hear, you're not going to have a great transaction. And ultimately, if your goal is to sell your house, you really have to look at what the market is doing. And you can't argue with the market.
Yep.
And so sometimes you have to be polite but firm. But I think that those clients out there who are willing to listen to what the market is telling them, they end up much happier than those who perhaps are a little bit stubborn and unwilling to listen to what the market is telling them. And one statistic that I think is perhaps most important for that group of people is that we have roughly 100 some odd years worth of data that shows that the worst thing in the world that you can do is have a house that sits on the market for more than 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Because once that begins to happen, the amount of money that you ultimately get drops precipitously. And this isn't just Greg Prill saying it.
Sure.
It isn't Coldwell, Banker, Bain saying this. This is the National Association of Realtors with over 100 years worth of data.
Sure.
So when you take the time to retain the services of a competent, full-service real estate broker, he or she's going to do everything in their power to do for you what you can't do for yourself, which is access the meaningful data that establishes a fair market price for your house.
So we're almost wrapping up the show here, Greg. I just want you to give one strategy really quickly to my sellers on how to maximize their price.
Declutter your house. I know that you've spent 20 years in your house, or maybe even 10 or 5 years, and you don't quite realize how much furniture that you have in your living room, but you would be surprised. And that's a big turnoff for a lot of people. And you can have a beautiful house that's impeccably landscaped, that's well maintained. But if people walk in and they feel claustrophobic, they're not going to want to live there.
And what about saying, see, and that's what's funny with real estate. There's always, it depends if you're representing the buyer or you're representing the seller. Now, if you put your buyer's hat on, go look for those homes that are all messed up and tell them just to leave everything. And I bet you're going to get a good deal on that house. Right, Greg?
Absolutely.
Greg, thank you so much for coming into studio and sharing your information, wealth of information with my listeners, and just excited to see you come back again.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And this is your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, signing off for the day. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Enjoy this beautiful, beautiful place we live in, Seattle. Good weather or bad weather, it's just kind of exciting to see what's going to happen, right?
Absolutely.
We never know. I mean, it's just a beautiful city. So everybody enjoy. Thank you so much for listening to my show. And I look forward to talking with you again next Saturday. And if you missed all this show, listen to the rebroadcast of the show tomorrow, or you can go online at themoneyhour.com. Enjoy your weekend.